So, Greg, tell me, where would your life be today if you had been confident as a child?
Where would my life be today if I had been confident as a child? I'd probably be exactly where I want it to be. That is off in the distance right now. And honestly, that would be it's like the dream. My life would be the dream that I have.
Okay, that's great. That's really great.
Welcome to Simply Satisfied, everybody. My name is Greg. I'm your host. In this show, we go over all the things that people question in life. We try to simplify them. We cut through all the noise. We cut through all the BS that people overcomplicate, and we try to get to the real deep meaning of life. And today, I am joined by Massimo Rigotti, who is an accomplished author. He is an inspiring figure. He had, like myself, has journeyed through rock bottom, but he has made it to unreachable heights. He has soared to unreachable heights and remarkable heights. He is the creator of a groundbreaking S.O.B.E.R method, which he calls it, which flavor of confidence, S.O.B.E.R method, and he embraces the limitless possibilities of personal growth and recovery in each and every single one of us. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Greg, but I'm not letting you off that easy. You got to give me a little bit more detail there on that childhood dream because did you actually have a feeling and understanding of what confidence was like as a child?
I did not. I to be honest, there was a lot of period of my life where I thought that I was being confident. I thought that I was being brave, and sometimes it came off as cockiness because I was selfish, and sometimes it came off as trying to prove something or like caring too much what other people thought of me. And really, like, if I could look back to even some of my earliest memories, all of the confidence that I ever had was not for myself. It was for the ego or other people or whatever it may be. It was never for the right reason.
So, in other words, you were somewhat putting on a mask of confidence that would lead others to believe you knew what you were doing.
Yeah. Yeah, I was definitely a mask wearer. I was pretty good in the theater, and I wasn't even a theater kid. So,
Oh man, I think we all do that though. I had the same exact challenge in my own existence is that I put on that mask and just kept caking it on until eventually it was too much. It was too much weight to carry and too much to hold. And that's when everything just started crumbling apart because that's a lot of pressure to hold. And for people to believe that you are capable of things that you're not, that you don't even know what you're doing, it's a lot of pressure on someone. And that
yeah.
ultimately can take you in lots of bad directions, right?
Yeah, and that's like you talk about wearing masks, you talk about the pressure of wearing those masks or not wearing those masks. Like, when did you realize that you were putting on masks to almost like please other people or please this other version of yourself?
Honestly, not until I was in rehab. I mean, that might be amazing, but it was John Hall. He was a counselor of mine in rehab that cracked it wide open for me and made me recognize the fact that I was under this crushing weight of trying to hold up this image of what everybody saw me as, and I believed that I had to project. And in doing that, it had become such a burden that the only way that I could hold it up was to constantly drink and tell myself that it was going to be okay.
Yeah. Now let's rewind a little bit because I want to hear, like, can you share a little bit about your personal journey? What led you to rehab? What led you to where you are at today, and what inspired you to, like, what inspired you to make those changes?
Well, I mean, there's obviously a long story involved there, but I'll give you the short version. So I would describe my existence in life as I had a very charmed existence. I mean, I had a solid upbringing in a two-parent home, uh, and I performed well in school. I had friends. I didn't. I had a job in high school. I got out of school. I immediately became an entrepreneur. I started several companies. I mean, everything just looked like fantastic glory land from the outside, but there were some underlying problems that existed. First of all, I was undiagnosed bipolar for probably much of my teenage years, and got diagnosed when I went to my first year of college. And of course, I just said, no, I'm not, because, I feel fine. I'm great. But the challenge to that is that I would have a lot of mania episodes. And the only way to tame that was this great thing called alcohol. It was like my best friend.
Yeah,
I could,
we all love
I
it.
yeah. I mean, I could be just going in, and I would have like really high manias, sometimes often being awake for 5 days straight. And the only thing that would bring me down to be able to sleep or be able to interact with the world um, was alcohol. And so I would just like get in this constant state of drinking to keep that lid on myself. And thankfully, I mainly stayed in up phase of bipolar. But when my depression was equally crushing, and I would come down into a 2 to 3 day just could not move type of situation. And so I hid that. I hid that from the world my entire adult life, and I'm somehow I managed to hide it all the way until I was married, that I had these time periods where I would just literally need to pull back. And what I would do often before, since I own my own company, is real easy to say, hey, I'm taking a couple days and whatever. But a couple days was I went home, I curled up in bed and didn't move for 3 days, right? Um, and no one knew. So I didn't have any help. But everything started getting it was more, because alcohol is one of these things where you need more and more and more of it to get the same. Well, most drugs are like that. Eventually, you're chasing a high that you or a position that you want
Yeah.
that you can't attain anymore. You're like, oh well, I need more. And so um, I ended up working in the entertainment industry in Los Angeles, and I was representing talent. And it was about this time. This was in the early aughts, 2002, 2003. And this is when I was drinking a lot, but also needed to get a lot done. And suddenly I added what I often refer to jokingly as the cocaine sidecar to my experience of addiction. So now I was drinking alcohol, and I had cocaine on the side. Well, the cocaine did another thing for my bipolar. It
Oh, I
basically,
bet.
I mean, it was the best antidepressant ever.
I bet it was.
I mean, you literally can't be upset or down when you're on that drug, for sure. And I mean, at the end of the day, that's what it is. It is an antidepressant because of the way it takes care of your brain.
Yeah.
So, but that's crushing. And then I ended up marrying one of my clients and left Los Angeles and moved back to the Kansas City area, where my parents, my brother and sister were, and started a printing company of all things. I have kind of a wild entrepreneurial story of a bunch of different companies, but
Oh, I'm
but
definitely going to ask about all that too, but
but so anyway, things just started falling apart, and I saw that I was not. I saw that I was going to crash and burn. So
Mhm.
I went to my now ex-wife and I said, it would be best if we parted. And so she got out before things got really bad. And about 2 years after that, I um, I ended up homeless. But just before I did, I randomly met a young lady named Samantha Thomas on a beach in Florida when I was on a brief vacation with some friends. And we hit it off like instantaneously. It was the quickest match I've ever experienced in my life. And for whatever wild reason, she was like hell bent on fixing me. And
Mhm.
for whatever reason, I allowed her to.
Yeah.
Because then I ended up homeless, and I was out living on the street. I didn't have a phone, and we started exchanging letters, and this is in 2015. And she is the person who single-handedly cared for me through this period of 15, 16 months where I was homeless, and showed me that I could get better. And so I stood up sober on March 23rd of 2016, and it's been a rocket rise since. To except this time around in life, I'm doing everything sober. Unfortunately, on August 1st of 2020, in what I feel is just dark irony, Samantha was murdered by a drunk driver, and he's currently serving a 25-year sentence in prison. And that was just absolutely heart-wrenching. And she had not stopped in her overall care for me, obviously in those years that continued. Our relationship continued during that time period, and I had just found that I needed to do something different, that AA wasn't enough. And so she constantly was encouraging me to write down my own method on what I was doing. And that's what ultimately became the sober method. And I kind of toyed about writing it, and she was always kind of nagging me that I should, but I didn't do it until she passed away. And then I started writing almost immediately after that. And that's what I do today. I honor her legacy by trying to help as many people as I can find their sobriety and strength.
That's amazing. Yeah, it's definitely a great way to honor her legacy, and everything she did to help you.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah.
to go from, I mean, it sounds like you and I had very similar upbringings, until you hit the multiple business phase and everything. But to go from the really high to the really low, to be back on your way up, what, you had her to help you to get through some of the lowest of the lows, right? Do you have a specific reason? Do you have a reason why you never stopped? Why you continue this path? Maybe even before you even met her.
Was there a reason that I was continuing to drink? Like I was on this, like on the decline, or
Yeah. What led to the decline that just continued, like, because you were successful, right? You
Yeah.
had
Oh yeah.
you had all this other stuff, but what led to what made you think, oh, I still want to drink? Like, what led you down that decline?
What really was leading me was I had no confidence in who I was. I was such a people pleaser to a degree that anyone who knows me now would think that I am talking about someone entirely different. And you know what I tell them? I am talking about someone entirely different, because that
Yeah.
person is dead. I killed that person when I
Yeah.
became sober.
Yeah. You gotta kill the old self. You gotta do it.
You do, and it's a hard thing to do. There's some difficulty that you go through when you remake yourself to the level of that you and I both have, because you really have left a ghost that still is part of you. You've killed that person inside of you, but that's what it was. And I'll tell you, as I neared the end, when I filed for divorce and told my ex-wife that, look, this is not going to work. At that point, I went into I'm going to run this thing into the mountain.
But you saw it coming, right?
Oh yeah.
You knew.
Oh,
That's
I
okay.
did.
So how did you know?
I realized that I couldn't contain or stop my drive to drink. There was absolutely, I was drinking literally. I'd get up in the middle of the night and have a shot. I mean,
Really?
I had oh yeah. I mean, and then for a while that used to be, I'd walk downstairs and I'd go to the bar and I'd pour myself, a shot of Jack Daniels and slam it and then go back to bed. And eventually that became the handle of Jack Daniels was sitting on my nightstand. And I would just, if I woke up, I'd take a pull off the bottle and go back to sleep.
Wow.
I mean, yeah, it was bad. It was really bad. And I just felt like I couldn't stop. And I did not have any belief in my ability to stop. So that which is wild because at the same time that this was occurring, in 2012, I still was running a business with employees at this point, and I could
Mm-hmm.
tell that it was going to completely collapse. And there's a little bit of loneliness at the top that folds into this. There's a limited number of people that you can really talk to when you're the guy that's always in charge. And I
That
had
makes
always
sense.
been in charge.
Yeah.
Um, who do you talk to? And anyone that is at your level, you're probably doing business with them. So the last thing that you can do is like, hey, John, hey, I just really want to tell you about my horrible alcohol and cocaine problem. You think we can talk about that? Like, and then the first, and question back would be like, is that why you were demanding you get paid in 15 days instead of 30 last month? Maybe. Yeah. I mean, like, how do you possibly breach that
Is
conversation?
that why you needed all $100 bills?
Yes, exactly. Is that why I'm paying you in cash now?
It's
um,
it's it's a difficult conversation because, like you said, it's lonely at the top because you don't feel like you can talk to the people that you're doing business with or the people at your level, but you also don't feel like you can talk to those people that are quote unquote below you, right?
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
so I get it because the lonely parts when you feel like you can't connect with the people around you, but you also you're not where you need to be or want to be, right? I understand that. And how did you make it through that long? And you said you let it run its course. You said you kind of drove it into the mountain, right?
Oh
And
yeah.
I think that's a big part because a lot of people try to change before like they've completely killed the old stuff, like we said, or completely let it die, and it always comes crawling back. Um, so so you filed for the divorce, and then you drove it completely into the mountain, became
Hmm.
homeless, right?
Yeah.
Was the homelessness part of the process?
Well, I think it definitely was. I I felt like there was a really good chance that I was going to become homeless 3 years before it happened. It was just a matter of like how quickly was it going to happen, and and then it became what can I learn from this experience, and that happened right as I knew that I was going to be kicked out of. I mean, like a couple days before I knew the sheriff was coming to throw me out of my home, a home that at one point I had owned free and clear, but in those last couple of years had mortgaged in order to keep being able to keep the lights on and of course keep my habits up, right? uh,
Yeah,
so I did that to myself. I mean, I equally, if I had pulled myself together right after my divorce, I probably would have been okay. But I just didn't have the strength to do it. Again, because there was such a glossed image on who I was and what I was capable of. So much so, and Greg, this might just absolutely blow your mind, but I write this book in 2023 and it comes out, and so many of my friends buy it and they read it and they're like, how was this? I had no idea that you were going through all of this.
yeah,
You know, and that told me it was just reinforcement of how well I had put that mask on, and I was tired of wearing it. And I think that I knew that the only way to take it off was to just tear it off, and the only way to do that is to lose everything. And that humility, I needed that. I really did. And that might be a weird thing to say, but I needed to lose everything in order to really feel connected to the world and the way that I do today.
so it showed you a different side of life, didn't it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it showed me I have a real appreciation for the struggles that people go through. Of course, I also know how to spot fake homeless people now. So I know who and who not to give money to when I see them out asking for it. Uh,
Yeah.
but it also taught me a deep appreciation for those that struggle with other mental health challenges. There was lots of schizophrenia that was something that I had never really been exposed to that much, but learning how to interact with people who have schizophrenia. That was something that I learned. And then like understanding that there are lots of smaller groups of people that organize, and you kind of become very clannish on the street.
Yeah.
And that you know, you have a guy who's really good at tech, and you have a guy that's really good at finding blankets, and you have a guy that's really good at figuring out what time dumpsters are being, you know, food's being thrown away. And I mean, it sounds really wild to talk about those things, but you find a way. You're in survival mode, and so you have to do whatever is necessary to survive and lean on those that have skills around you, and you kind of frame up your own little minor cities, you know, of, you know, 15 to 20 people, like this is our little group, and we take care of ourselves, and you kind of rely on those around you. It's really in a way, it's kind of cool. It's a simple life. And
Yeah.
um I think that humility that I got from that allowed me to see some goodness in others that I wasn't able to see before I'd been homeless.
Yeah. I can get with that one because you know as well as I do where I've been. You know, we used to talk about all the time that like we had in prison we used to talk about all the time we had a roof over our heads and we knew where our next meal was coming from. Even if the meal was slop, we knew where it was coming from. Whereas you were homeless, you didn't necessarily have a roof over your head. You didn't necessarily know where your next meal came from. Even lower than lower on the totem pole. And it totally does give you a whole new appreciation for life. I hear what you're saying about that being part of your journey because you had to get to that low. You had to hit that rock bottom to appreciate everything that came before and everything that's going to come after, right? And so,
Absolutely.
how did you beat addiction? Like how did you finally beat it and how do you maintain that today? How do you maintain sobriety today?
I think I can sum up the maintaining it very easily, that in those that try to reach it know what I'm talking about. It is the internal want to continue to experience life the way it feels sober, because it's such a much more deep and rich experience life is, because you have all of your feeling, all of your emotions, you have all of your senses about you. And when you're sober, you experience life in a great way. Now, this is something that probably is very difficult for a lot of people to relate to, because so many people are numb, but because they're not sober from other things that is numbing them from these experiences. And what I'm talking about, such as devices or television, or there's lots of other things that might be keeping you back from feeling life the way that I am trying to express. Like, I think life is incredible and joyous today, and that's something that, a decade ago I would have called me insane. So
Yeah.
for saying that, but how did I actually get across that finish line? Well, like everybody that becomes, or that comes across and becomes sober for a long period of time, there were a lot of fits of starts and stops, of relapses, and the fundamental. I thought that I would stop. So in this journey, I'm on the street, and about August of 2015, it was really hot out, but that didn't stop me from drinking. And by now, that Jack Daniels had been replaced by whatever cheap vodka or gin or anything that was, I could get my hands on, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Somebody's
so
moonshine they're making out of a trash can.
does not matter. I mean, how did you make this? Oh man, this is good. Um, you're not picky at that point, because you're chasing the feeling. You're not actually enjoying anything about it. You're not enjoying anything about it on any sense, because it starts to become painful when you're that addicted to something. And alcohol is horrible, because if I could not maintain, then it was bad. And I didn't really recognize how bad it was until there was this time in August of 2015, and I ended up hospitalized, and I had multiple seizures, and ultimately I was, well, on the verge of being pronounced dead. I was gone for 6 minutes and 18 seconds.
Wow.
And 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 I had an NDE, and I had a near death experience in that span, which we could go back to in a minute if you want to.
Yeah.
Coming out of that, you would think, oh, and then I was in the hospital for 14 days as they worked to like taper me off of alcohol with drugs and putting me into like
Yeah.
complete, we're going to knock you out for 2 days, to keep me from seizing again and again. And what I found out in the process is like my baseline amount of alcohol in my blood just to not get tremors and shakes was 0.18 at that point.
Holy
So
cow.
yeah, so that just to be, basically I'm running around out there like multiple times the legal limit if I were driving, was what I was needed just to keep a steady hand, just to function without like tipping over. And that's why it took them 2 weeks basically to get me to a point where my body was back to normal. And you think, okay, you've gone through all this, there's no way you'd ever drink again. 3 weeks later, I tipped right back into drinking again. And that went for about another 5 weeks. And I walked into this liquor store, and it's a liquor store I'd gone to on a regular basis. And if you're a good alcoholic, you rotate your liquor stores because you don't want anyone thinking you're an alcoholic, even though they know you're an alcoholic, right? I mean, I'm not. I mean, we all do it. That drink a lot. It's like, I don't want them to see me again. I was just in yesterday, or I was just in this morning, right? So you like rotate them. I walk in, and this old guy behind the counter, he said, "You're not looking too good." And I said, "Oh, I'm all right." And he goes, "Look, I'm going to sell this to you, and you're a customer, and this is America." I remember him saying, "This is America." I thought that was a nice touch. I'm like, I'm going to
Yeah.
sell it to you. Free country. If you want to
Yeah.
drink
Yeah.
yourself to death, you
Yeah.
can, right? But he handed me the bottle, and he says, the hospital's straight down the road there. And he goes, I want you to think really hard when you go out to your car and you start drinking this. She goes, you should just drive yourself straight down and, check
Wow.
yourself in.
Wow.
And I did. I went immediately after that, and I walked in and I said, I want to check myself in. And then that led me into rehab. And yeah, it was great because then, as I mentioned, John Hall, he cracked it. He finally saw something that I didn't see in myself, and this fact that I was wearing this mask and I was a people pleaser. And I didn't see those things. It's amazing I didn't, but I had never really opened that up. And so once John opened that, I started digging deeper and deeper and deeper into myself to figure out, like what is going on with me, and recognizing that I really had no confidence to stand on my own at all. I was weak. I was
You
this
needed the alcohol.
Yeah, yeah. And so once I realized that, I got discharged Thanksgiving timeframe of 2015. And I stayed sober until about New Year's, and then I slipped, and then I came out, and then I slipped again. I was like in this rapid fire where sometimes I would go. I think I had 5 total slips between January and March 23rd of 16 when I finally became sober, and and I was back and forth. And Samantha, of course, was like, "What are you doing to yourself? You finally have, like, do you see what you're doing?" And then I called her on the 23rd of March, and I said, "You know what? This is stupid. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm never going to drink again," and I haven't. And
Wow.
it's been the greatest feeling ever.
Yeah.
But I had to want it. You have to want it yourself.
Did you ever send that guy from the liquor store like flowers and chocolates?
Actually, funny thing is that by the time I went back to the liquor store to check on him, because he wasn't an older guy, he had sold the liquor store. So I don't know what, never knew how to track him down. But, if he hears this podcast,
Yeah.
he would probably recognize me.
He's your guardian angel.
Yes. Yes, definitely. Because that set me on a good path. And, I think we have a lot of those. I will make the argument right here and now that Samantha was my guardian angel because she entered my life randomly on a beach just by walking by. I mean, the sheer chance of that. And then you meet people every day, but they don't become an integral part of your life.
Yeah.
So, and then she exits my life, and that exit becomes the catalyst for the work that I do today, and which is really interesting. So,
yeah. And so the work you do today, helping other people, is to discover exactly what you discovered for yourself, right? You call it the S.O.B.E.R method. Okay, walk me through the S.O.B.E.R method. Walk me through as if you are teaching it to me like you were trying to help me, right? Walk me through it.
All right, Greg. Well, you've got this challenge, and we got to work through it. So, have you ever noticed that the best way to work through something is just a little bit at a time? Because if you take on the full, monster, you're never going to get through. You're going to tire out. You're going to be like, oh, this is hard. You're going to quit. You're not going to stick with it. So here's the great thing about the S.O.B.E.R method. We're going to take you and we're going to improve you a little bit at a time by picking one thing about you. And we're going to work through and change that and modify it. And when we're done with that, we're going to just reinforce it, but we're going to go back and we're going to pick another thing and another thing. So S.O.B.E.R works on a cycle. It's a continuous improvement plan for you as a person. So S.O.B.E.R stands for Stoic, Observe, Behavior, Execute, and Restore. So you start out with Stoicism, which is ancient philosophy. It's easy for anyone to understand. I always recommend Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. It's a great building block for you to look at. And the reason that Meditations and Marcus Aurelius, I find it so fascinating that people don't necessarily understand that this would be like looking at the inner workings of the most powerful man on earth 2,000 years ago. So here's a guy who is looking at himself and pointing out his own personal flaws and challenges in his diary and his own weaknesses and how he deals with those. That's what Meditations is. That's amazing. Most people that are in power are like, I'm the best. There's nothing wrong with me. Okay. I know very few people who are capable of actually looking at themselves when they wield all the power and say, man, I need to work on that. You don't hear that very often. And so that's why I think it sets a good blueprint for the S.O.B.E.R method, because basically I'm asking you to step into that same frame. I'm asking you to admit that you don't know everything and that there might be things that are wrong about you that you don't even know that are wrong about you until we start taking this journey. We'll take one of the most popular as an example to kind of walk through. The most popular one I can think of off the top of my head is the obstacle is the way. And that's not the entire verse for Meditations, but the purpose of the obstacle is the way is that Marcus Aurelius was talking about the most difficult challenge that you face and are afraid of is the path to your success. So that which you fear, if you conquer it, you will have the greatest success. Okay. So we step back from that and we look at our own life in what we're dealing with in our triggers to drink or to use drugs. So what is my greatest trigger? What gets me 100% of the time I want to drink or I want to use drugs? Whatever that is, we're going to take that and we're going to look and we're going to observe your behavior. What are all the triggers that lead to this? That's the observe step. So we're going to look at, okay, this is triggered by every time my sister-in-law calls me, I want to just drink, a bottle of gin. Okay, well, maybe we should figure out a way to deal with your sister-in-law, because evidently, she lives next door. Okay, so we
Maybe
need
we should change her contact to like do not answer.
well, if we don't have a choice, so we got to look at a way to
Yeah.
diffuse that situation. So then we know that this is a challenge. We go into the behavior step, and this is where we map out the actual behavior and say, okay, this person is causing me a challenge to my sobriety. How might I change my interaction with them in order to improve it? Let's
Okay.
look at all the interactions that I'm having with, and we're going to continue with this sister-in-law that we're and I've never had my sister-in-law was awesome. My ex-sister-in-law, she was awesome. So
Yeah.
I have no complaints about her. But anyway, we'll use
This
this
is nobody
example.
real. This is nobody real.
Yeah, I'm not talking about anybody real, living or dead. Okay, so so let's look at all the interactions we have with her. And I notice that I am least likely to want to do this if I tell her that I don't have time to talk about this right now, but how about when I see you next week, we can talk more about this. Those times I don't generally want to have a drink. Okay, let's test it. So then we move into the execute step. So this is our new behavior that we're going to use every time we feel challenged by the sister-in-law. If she calls on the phone, we're immediately going to diffuse it. I really don't have time to talk right now. We're getting together for that event next week. How about we talk then? Oh, that'd be fine. Great. Click. Did it work? Yes, it worked. Okay, that's awesome. So that one's solved. Well, maybe it didn't work. And that's the beauty of this whole system. And so I have to give this example. Maybe that didn't work, or you still felt a little tempted. So then you go back to the observe step. Observe what just happened. Okay, what was said? What was the like micro trigger that led you to still kind of maybe want to drink? Oh, it was when she said this. Can we change that? Yeah, we could if we asked it in a different way. Okay, great. New behavior mapped. Next time she rings up, we test it out again in the execute step. Did it work that time? Yes, it did. Great. Fantastic. Now we're moving on to restore, because we have a behavior that we've successfully remapped to massively decrease your need to use. And in the process, you've gained confidence in your ability to handle a situation that previously was just completely paralyzing to you. And that's the beauty of it. So you're stacking up wins on the confidence side of like, every time I do it this way, it works, and I feel more and more stable and confident in myself. And at the same time, you're remaining sober. So it's win-win on both sides of the fence. In your restore step, you're looking at other situations that may involve this particular action that you've just improved. Were there other people that I have, maybe done bad? This is the make amends step if you were in AA. This, have I harmed anyone or said bad things to someone because of similar type of behavior that I just fixed with my sister-in-law? Oh, yes, I can think of 5 people. Okay, reach out to those 5 people. Now, the most important thing that I always stress in this step is we're not looking for forgiveness. We're not looking to become best friends. We're not looking for the all we're doing is reaching out and saying, hey, I did this and I felt really bad about it. And I'm sorry about that. And they might tell you to, pound sand or F off, I mean, like, you never know what people are going to do.
Yeah.
But the vast majority of people are like, well, I appreciate that, because most people don't expect to have someone come back years later and say, hey, I remember when I did this to you and I felt bad about it. And it's good. I mean, 99 times out of 100, you'll never talk to the person again. And then you get done with that and you're back in the S step, and you pick something else and you move forward. So that's how it works. It's I think the beauty of the system is the fact that you're just taking off a little chunk of something, you're working through that chunk, you're improving, you're stacking a win, and then you're going back and you're doing something else. Me personally, I got to think now, because it's I just got back to a start of a new cycle here. I think I'm I think I'm 137 on my own trips through my own system. So
137.
yeah, and
Wow.
every time it's getting smaller and smaller of like, okay, what can I improve? The great thing about it, because it's all, you're journaling this as you go, and you're in what I call your sober journal, is that I can flip back and I can look at things that I was doing 2, 3 years ago and be like, wow, I would never react that way today, because I've worked on all of these other things since then. And you can literally read your own improvement. It's like a documentary of your own self-improvement, which is
Yeah.
just really amazing. So that's how sober works. I mean, it's not I don't think it's really complicated. It might sound that way at first, but once you get in and you start doing it, it kind of becomes in its own way. I hate to use this word, but it almost becomes a little addictive to continuously self-improve yourself.
I can relate to
I can
that though.
I can joke about the stuff like that now. I just last weekend, on the 23rd of March, so that would be what, 9 years that I celebrated being sober. So I mean,
Yeah, that's awesome.
yeah, it's great.
And
Did that make sense?
it makes sense. It makes sense, and it
Okay.
makes sense what you said about it being addictive, because I've definitely gone through my period of like becoming so obsessed with like self-help and personal development. And the question I have is, you get to this point where, and I'm kind of like, part of my story comes from the opposite angle, right? Where instead of seeing myself at the top, instead of seeing myself as I'm the best, right? And I could do no wrong, there's no change. I've always seen myself as the type of person as there's more I can do, but it was very destructive, right? So I always would question, but I would question in a way of like almost beating myself down. You know, what am I doing wrong? Why am I doing this wrong? Have you ever experienced that where you changed the script a little bit from going like, from I'm the best, I don't need to change, to I need to give myself a little grace. I need to give myself a little acceptance. There's still things I can improve upon, but have you ever experienced that part?
Yeah, I definitely have. But I've experienced that as a sober person, not as a drunk. I didn't. So this is something new, and I feel it comes from my hard drive on myself to improve constantly. And so when I don't, I I'm very unforgiving on myself. I that's something I do need to work on, and I know it. That comes from my own personal perfectionism, which is ingrained in me, and I did not lose that from, like, I've been that way my whole life.
Yeah.
And so I've always beat myself up, but I didn't have the, like, kind of that feeling of maybe I needed to give myself a little bit of grace. Today, I feel that. Instead, I look at the gain and say, good job. You're this far along now. And in that positive, then makes me want to continue, because sometimes the negative talk will lead you to being discouraged and resentful of what you need to do. And I was so hard driving that even if I was resentful when I was drunk, I would still keep pushing, because I have to achieve, I have to keep this mask on, I have to get it done. And so, in a sense, I was self-harming in doing that, because I never gave myself grace, ever.
Yeah. And so that positive talk that you were talking about is, that's where the flavor of confidence comes in, right?
Yes, exactly. So the the whole flavors of confidence comes from a self-portrait that Samantha gave me in August of 14. So we met in March of 14, and I still at home at this point. And she sent it to me for my birthday in August of 14. And it's really beautiful. It hangs on my wall. But when you get up close to it, and I didn't notice it at first when I first got it, you see that it's just a bunch of individual small pen and pencil like dots on a page. There's probably well over 10 to 20,000 like individual dots that make up the whole
Really?
picture of her. Yeah. And she had titled the piece Flavors of Confidence. And so I asked her, I said, well, what's with the title? And she said, well, I'm just a bunch of pieces of a fake whole held together by what you see of me. And there's something very deep in that, because I think a lot of us are that way. You know, we have a little piece of confidence that like frames us up and allows us to be seen as a particular type of person, and another piece, and then that becomes a person. But inside you can feel like you have no confidence, which is how she felt.
Yeah.
And that was something we had in common. That was the commonality that really brought us very deeply together. And so as I was working on standing up sober, I began thinking a lot about this concept, and we talked through it a lot, and recognized that confidence is the core that you need to really be able to be successful in every aspect of your life. And so it goes beyond having those little pieces of confidence, which a little flavor of confidence is, as she's put
Yeah.
it, and making it into something great. So building your own unique flavor of confidence is what uniquely brings you together so that you can be confident. And then, of course, everybody always asks me, what is confidence? Well, the best way I can describe confidence is you'll know it when you see it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, I'm half joking, but real true confidence is the ability for you to present yourself in any situation and never once question what you're about to do. You just know, you're just existing. If you could just exist and know that the next thing you say, the next thing you do is how you feel, you're confident. Anything less than that, you're not you're not fully confident. You might be confident, but you have not reached that. And I haven't reached that either, but I can tell you one thing, there's very few times where I'm like, ooh, I'm kind of worried about what's going to happen next. And that's come from working so hard to improve myself.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. What would your life look like if you had been confident your whole life?
Phew. I'd be a heck of a lot more worldly successful, that's for sure. I think I would have made a much larger impact on the world around me had I been confident. And what I mean by that is the work that I'm doing now, that is like true work to help others improve, I think would have just been something natural if you would have been around me. I just would have been in this natural state of of bringing everyone around me to a better place in their life. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
would have made such a massive impact on the world. And I would have been a better friend, a better husband, a better brother. I mean, there's just, I let a lot of people down. And I think that all fundamentally tied back into a lack of confidence, because the first thing that I was always doing was trying to prove to myself that I was capable and I was confident enough to do something. And if I believed that I had that all along, I wouldn't have wasted so much energy trying to make everyone believe I was confident. What a waste of time. I mean, looking
Wow.
back,
Yeah.
what a waste of time.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's crazy to even think about, the what ifs. But do you still think you would have came across the same realization, the same appreciation for life, the same method that you have, helped other people with? Do you think you still would have came across that same mindset?
Not in a million years. There's not a chance at all. I think that we're all the circumstances, and you haven't gone into it, but I know if anyone who has not listened to Greg's first episode of his podcast, go listen to it. It's phenomenal. You really need to take a listen. But I think that we're a product of everything that happens in our life. And those of us who find ourselves and are then capable and confident and able to speak to it and teach it. And those are a lot of skill sets I just named off. I mean, you might get one or two of those. I am so blessed that I have been able to frame this all back up and actually share it with others, because I am a product of so many horrible things, but also so many amazing things. And I think that that provides you and I both a rare look on both sides of the world. On we can see both the pain, and we can see the pleasure. We can see the rich and the poor. We can see the criminal and those who are just. We have interacted with such a broad range of society and learned how they think, to the point that it makes it very easy and natural for us to want to teach and help others.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you ever run into someone from your past, or someone who knows your past? Maybe not, they're not from your past, but they've heard you talk about it, or if they've heard it from someone else. Do you ever run into that person or one of those people, and they just don't trust you? They just don't see the new you, right? They don't see the confidence that you wish you had before.
I can't think of anyone specifically at the moment, but what has occurred is that there are some people who have known the new me and not known my past, then learn of my past and decide that they don't want to have anything to do with me.
Yeah.
That's happened. That's happened a couple times, and in both instances that I can think of right off the top of my head, I told them that I felt sorry for their inability to see that people are capable of change. And it just became a agree to disagree situation, and they exited my life. It's I wish that I could find a better way to have that not happen, because it happens a lot to others. I mean, not me. It's just it happens a lot to people, and I I think that part of that challenge is that we often as a society don't teach people to be open-minded to the capability for change. With this caveat, most people don't change. So those of us who do, we're rare. And it's so difficult. I'll never forget, because I had 3 DUIs, and I always called them SUIs because I was each case sleeping in my car drunk. So I mean, like, I wasn't moving. I wasn't,
Yeah.
but so I'm standing before one of these judges, and I mean, like, most of them were, because I was running away from these for some time, and then once I got sober, about a year afterwards, I decided, you know what, I need to take care of these, because if I ever get pulled over, I'm in trouble. I'm going to go to jail.
Yeah.
And I had 3 of them. So there's a good chance I was going to lose my license. But I faced it head on. That's a perfect example of the obstacle is the way. So I faced it head on. And that was an expensive journey, $24,000 in both court and legal fees, plus about a total of 2 weeks in jail. So across all of them. So it was not exactly the most fun. However, one of these judges was extremely difficult with me. And I kept saying, look, I have shown up. I did not have to. You could have dragged me in here. And my lawyer was trying to get me to be quiet, but I was not having it. I
Yeah.
wanted to tell him that, look, there are exceptions. And the judge sat there. He did listen to me, and he said, I appreciate your passion for this. And part of me believes that you, in fact, are the one person out of 10,000 that have stood in front of me that has changed. I want to believe that. And part of me really does believe that. But that's the reason that I enforce these rules uniformly, because you could be that one person, but you also could be the one person that I take a chance on, and then you show me you're just like everyone else that's been in front of me. And
Yep.
that's when I realized he's right. And just because you have made the change doesn't mean that you won't suffer the consequences that everybody before you that is incapable of change. They gave you the path, and you have got to walk that path. And it gave me a lot more grit. It really did, because it showed me that this was not going to be as easy to overcome as I thought it was going to be. And that, I mean, that was my first year of sobriety, so I was like really challenged by some of this. Going, this is not fair. I've done,
Yeah.
I was still had that mentality that I could get out of it, so to speak, by like
That you were
putting on
untouchable.
exactly. But boy, I knew it after I did those stints in jail that that was not
Yeah.
to be.
Not the case, huh?
Yeah, but it's great. I mean, so to tie this all the way back to your question almost 5-6 minutes ago, there's absolutely nothing that I would change about my life.
Yeah. And when somebody comes to you now and they want to change, right? What advice do you give them? Do you jump them right into the sober method, or do you kind of give them a little bit of advice first?
Well, the first thing that I ask them is, why do they want to change? Because that why is an incredibly important thing. And if they start listing things that are external to themselves, then I can't help them yet, because that change has to come from within. And if that person says, because I want to be a better person for everyone, like that, okay, fine, I'm going to help you right away. Or, seriously, because that would be,
Yeah.
but most people, it's like, well, my mom says this, or my sister's
Yep.
really, I'm like,
Yep.
no, you're not, you're going to remain in challenged for some time. You have to actually know it. And so it's an easy in thing. So now if they pass the couple of questions and I can tell that like they're almost there, like they just need a little nudge, they're going to get there. Well, then I will just kind of, tiptoe into the sober method and say, hey, have you been to an AA meeting? Most of them have. And what did you think? I just kind of feel around the situation to see how committed they are to doing something or making changes.
Yeah.
And then I will go into the sober method at that.
Okay. We used to get people just like that in the gyms all the time, where they'd be like, I'd be like, why do you want to get in shape? And they'd be like, oh, I want to be able to play with my kids or play with my grandkids. I'm like, okay, like, but what about you? You know?
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
I understand that. And I think that asking those questions, it opens up a new awareness for them, and
Yeah. They don't know. You don't know I think most people don't know who they really are.
correct. And that's something that a lot of people don't want to sit with. And I didn't sit with it until I was forced to, and I'm guessing you didn't sit with it until you were forced to.
No, I don't think anyone does. And that's, in my humble opinion, that's one of the greatest challenges that we have that faces our society today, is that we're never alone with our thoughts long enough to actually ponder what we could do better for ourselves. Because if we had that time and that reflection, if everybody just would, even if everybody would just take 10 minutes a day and say, how could I better myself? Wow, this world would be amazing to be in today. It really would. But we don't have that. It's people don't take any time really to
Yeah.
to reflect.
People always look at me like I'm crazy when I'm like, oh, I gotta go take 15 minutes to journal and reflect, and they're like, what? Huh? And I'm like, yeah, man, I gotta go write down my thoughts.
Good for
um,
you. That's awesome. That's where it's at. And the great thing about journaling, because I tout it a lot, is you can look back at it and be like, wow, this was what I was thinking. What was I on? I mean,
yeah,
like, and I'm looking at my sober thoughts going, why did I think that? It's just
yeah.
wild. And yeah, it's really
Well, and
cool though.
I saw something the other day where the guy said, if I were to ask you to solve a simple math problem like 4 + 3, you'd be like, oh, it's 7. You can solve it in your head. But if I asked you to solve 4,864 plus 3,760, then you might be like, okay, I need a pen and paper,
Right.
And so when we try to figure out our lives or who we are or what we're going to do with our lives or what our purpose is, why is it so frowned upon to bust out a pen and paper and start writing and start trying to figure out all this other stuff? And that I was like, that's a really good way of explaining it.
That is. I'm taking that. I really like that. I
I
really
got
like
that
that. I had never thought of it that way. That's
for
great.
everybody listening. I did not come up with that. I got that from his name is Rob Dial. He's the mindset mentor, and I saw it on his TikTok. I got that from him. But Massimo, as we come to the end, I have one more question for you. And this is the big
What's that?
kicker question: is what is one thing? What is one lesson that you wish you would have learned earlier in life, or you wish somebody would have told you earlier in life?
That no one's opinion matters but my own. I would think that if I had known that, or had felt that, because that's the way I live my life today. The most important person's opinion is your own. And being allowed to, or allowing yourself to be swayed by everyone else, well, you should do this, this would be good for you. Follow your heart, follow your gut. I mean, do what is right for you, not what is right for someone else, or what someone else thinks is right for you. Because if you lead your life that way, it's going to be very wandering around, and you're never going to feel like you're really doing what you want to do. And I hear it a lot, and a lot of the people that I work with, it's like, I'm like, why are you working as a nurse? Well, my mom said I'd be good at it. Are you? I'm okay, but I don't really want to go to work every day. I'm like, well, what are you really interested in? Oh, well, and then you like find out something entirely different.
Yeah, they want to
And
be an
it's like,
artist or something.
yeah, yeah, or it might be somewhat tangential. Like, I really love working with kids, and I don't get to deal with kids. I'm like, okay, what if you combine the two? Is there any way that you could become like a pediatric nurse? I kid you not. This is what I get most of the time when I ask questions like that. I'd never thought of that before. And that's what I mean by nobody stops to reflect. If she had
Correct.
stopped for a few seconds, and this is I'm pulling from somebody I've actually helped. If she had stopped for just a few seconds and reflected about what she was passionate about and what she had a degree in, and combined the two, she's now a pediatric nurse and happy as can be about it. But it's just one of those things that I you just shouldn't care what people think, because most people that think about everybody in your life that has ever told you or made fun of you for something, or otherwise caused you to have self-doubt. Do you know that person now? Do you,
That's a
do,
lot of
do you have
people.
you ever? Yeah, exactly. But do you know any of them? Do any of their opinions matter to you at this exact moment in time?
Nope.
No. So don't let it mean something at the moment that it happens. And if you
Yeah.
did that, think about how much power you would have over yourself and your ability to think that you could do anything, because then you wouldn't doubt your ability to do something. You're like, okay, I might not be really good at it, but I'm going to try. And then that try becomes, I'm going to try again. And then you have some grit that you will lay down. A lot of the things that I wish that I would have followed through on in life, I stopped because somebody said, you're really probably not something you'd be very good at. I'm like, okay. And then I never did it again,
And then you just never
and
did it. You just stopped and you were like, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
yeah, exactly. And why did I accept that? And like, I don't anymore. And I know when we talked before this interview, I told you that one of the craziest things that I've done since I became sober is I just decided that I wanted to be a competitive figure skater. Yeah, it sounds a little crazy. And I was talking to a friend of mine the other night. He's asking me if I was watching the ISU championship that was going on, and I said, yeah. And he goes, it's really wild to me that I have to think of you, and he's known me for 15 years, as a figure skater now. and I and I said, well, I mean, like, I'm not going to be out there on that ice. He goes, maybe not, but I mean, you go to competitions and compete, and for me to say that I have a friend that's a competitive figure skater just blows my mind.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But that causes you to get down, fall down, get back up, continue to work and push and push and push. And that's what life is all about. And if everybody were to do that with something they're passionate about, they'd be a lot further down the road.
I love it. I love it. That is what life is all about.
Absolutely.
I love it. And that, I could not have put it better myself. When we talk about simplifying life and simplifying satisfaction and fulfillment on this show, I could not have said it better myself. And I really appreciate you having you here on the show, man. It's been really awesome.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Greg.
Of course. For everybody listening, I will link Massimo Rigotti's social medias and his website in the description of the show. Tune in to everything he's got going on. Tune in to the rest of the shows. I'll probably have him on here again because we could talk for hours. You never really know what we're going to come up with. But I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Massimo, do you have any last remarks for everybody listening?
Just go out there and have the confidence to do anything you want to do. Thank you, Greg.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Everybody keep smiling, keep striving, and I'll catch you guys next time.